Should punching a constituent to the ground be grounds enough for a sitting MP to be put behind bars, even for a short period of time? Well, the appeal court decided no. Mike Amesbury, the MP elected as Labour but since suspended by that party, will not be getting a custodial sentence. Instead, the sentence that was initially handed down to him of 10 weeks behind bars will be suspended for 2 years. In plain English, he's not going to prison. Instead, 200 hours of community service is the charge and an alcohol awareness course. Now, it doesn't take me to point out that many people have been comparing this somewhat lighter sentence for, punching a constituent to the floor, repeatedly punching a man outside the pub, with some of the stricter sentences that have been handed to individuals for things that they've written down on social media. Is this an example of two-tier justice, that people who actually commit violent acts against other individuals avoid prison, when people who write, albeit horrific things on social media, sometimes end up behind bars? Does that seem right? Does that seem just? Although people will, of course, point to the fact that this may well be a fairly normal sentence for people that end up in fights outside of pubs. The thing about this instance, though, is we've all seen the CCTV footage. Mike Amesbury, the Member of Parliament, is the one to swing the punch. He's not hit first. There is no sense of a fight. This is simply swing after swing after swing from someone who should know a lot better. But what does this all mean? What does this mean for the constituents of Runcorn and Helsby? This seat, of course, won by the Labour Party, a new seat after the Boundary Commission review that led to the new constituencies of the 2024 election.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Well, the area before, back in 2010 and 2015, had been held by a Conservative Member of Parliament, albeit under different boundaries. But of course, for the last couple of elections, this has been back in Labour hands, although, as I say, this particular seat was divided into 3 separate seats before the boundary review. What we do know is that Mike Amesbury won with a large share of the vote in the last election, and the Reform Party, not the Conservatives, but the Reform Party came in second place. Now, this has the noses of the Reform Party executive twitching, because of course a by-election may now be on the cards. Why do I say this? Because even a suspended sentence is grounds for a recall petition. Under the Recall Elections Act of 2015, a recall petition can be brought by constituents in the seat of an MP who has had a custodial sentence, and that does include a suspended custodial sentence, as is the case of Mike Amesbury now, or if there's been a significant suspension from the House of Commons of 10 sitting days or more. These are some of the triggers for that recall petition. So now that this new judgment has been handed down on Mike Amesbury, what happens? Well, the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, tells the returning officer for Runcorn and Helsby to start that 6-week recall petition. That means that the voters of that constituency can go to various places across the constituency for the next 6 weeks after this petition begins, and if 10% of them demand a fresh election, a by-election, well, that by-election will be granted. That's around 7,000 people that need to sign that petition. For a stroke of luck, that is actually almost the precise proportion of people who voted for the Reform Party last time. It's around 7,000 votes. Now, this could mean that we have a by-election in not too much time at all. Mike Amesbury himself, well, he's entitled to stand in that by-election, but it wouldn't be for the Labour Party, for they have suspended him. We know that the Reform Party has already been leafleting the constituency, even sending around a van with advertising on the side of it. They're clearly preparing for a big, big fight. Could this be the first by-election of this parliament, and could the Reform Party stand a chance of picking up a 6th member of parliament? Well, big questions to ask there. Well, let's dive more into the details of what could be a fascinating by-election in Runcorn. We spoke earlier to the political correspondent for The Spectator magazine, James Heal. Former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has had his 10-week prison sentence for assault suspended for 2 years following an appeal at Chester Crown Court.
Yes, this all seems to have happened terribly quickly. We're joined by political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal. This is quite a remarkable decision. Do we understand how it came about?
Well, I think it was always clear throughout the trial that Mike Amesbury intended to appeal if it was going to go this way. And it came about because I think that he clearly doesn't fancy much the chance of going to prison. And I think that ultimately the political effects of this are going to be separated out from the real-life consequences for Mike Amesbury. And he's been now sentenced to 200 hours community service, has to do an alcohol awareness course as well. And I think he'll be very relieved he's presumably on this basis not going to go to prison.
Wow, OK, 200 hours community service and an alcohol awareness course for violently assaulting one of your constituents in the street. OK.
I mean, yeah, as you say, Emily, I think that some people online are already contrasting this with some of the justice that have been handed out under the current government. And I suspect there'll be people talking about it. And, if I was Reform right now, I'd obviously be trying to make a political point about sentencing. And the video of Mike Amesbury, I think, probably speaks for itself, doesn't it? And it's gone viral repeatedly since the incident happened last October.
Now, of course, this all happened in Runcorn and Helsby. Lots of talk about whether or not a by-election will go ahead. We know the rules for a recall petition. There has to be a custodial sentence for an MP. That's one of the conditions whereby a recall petition can be brought. The other, a suspension from the House. But does a suspended sentence meet the guidelines set out under the Recall of MPs Act 2015?
My understanding is it does, and according to the Electoral Commission website. So we will see that recall petition process going ahead. And of course, Tom, even if it wasn't in this case, there would also be the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards process as well. And, given how they threw the book at other MPs, you think Chris Pincher, you think Boris Johnson, clearly in this case, given if force was involved, this was always going to end in a by-election, and it looks to me like it's going to be the rules around recall rather than the commissioner process, which are going to be what does for Mike Amesbury.
Yeah, and that's a really important moment because we've seen already campaigning get underway in Runcorn and Helsby. We've seen various parties get on with the leafleting already, despite the fact we don't have a date for this potential by-election. The Reform Party came in second in this constituency in the 2024 election. Do they stand a chance of winning?
Yes, they do. They stand a very good chance of winning, and that's, of course, shown in Reform's own actions, which is the weekend after the incident took place last October. Reform had a team ready out there leafleting that very weekend. And I think if you talk to Reform UK figures, on the one hand, they'll say, you know, this is a top 20 seat, one where Labour won with an overall majority, an absolute majority, 52% of the vote. On the other hand, they look at the polls, they look at all the headwind, they look at the fact they've now got 215,000 members, and they're quietly confident, I would say, and they stand a very good chance because there's been lots of talk about Reform's air war. Now it's time to deliver on the ground game too.
What do we know about Mike Amesbury as a character? Obviously, we know about this incident and the violent assault. We know he's now going to be facing community service rather than prison time. But is he the type of man who will want to cling onto his seat for as long as he can rather than resign in honour?
Well, I suspect very much, and I haven't spoken to anyone around Mike Amesbury himself, but you'd think if you were the Labour whips, you'll be trying to sort of give him the steer on what timings are going to look like. Clearly, the Labour whip's office, those in government, will want it to be at the most helpful time. Now, on the one hand, you can see the logic for going to time it with the local elections in May. If you think it's going to be a bad result, it it's going to be a loss. On the other hand, you might want to make it a story on the election night about Kemi Badenoch and Tory defeats. So I think right now it's clear that, given the fact there was the appeal, given the fact that Mike Amesbury still hasn't done an immediate statement, which he thought he might do. There have previously been cases where you've had similar instances and then MPs have put out statements straight away. It might be playing a longer game on this one, Emily.
OK, well, James Hill, thank you very much indeed for bringing us the latest on that remarkable story.
Well, what do you make of it all? It's going to be a fascinating time in British politics. The first potential by-election, if of course that 10% of constituent thresholds is met. If 7,000 people in Runcorn sign this recall petition over the course of what could be the next 6 weeks, well, we could have a fairly rapid timetable for the first parliamentary by-election of this parliament. Will the polls bear out truth? Will the Labour Party crash down from its heights of the 2024 election? Could the Reform Party pull off a surprise, or will they just run the Labour Party close? And where? Where will the Conservative Party be in all of this? They used to be competitive in this area, but have they fallen away? So many questions to ask. We'll have to follow it very closely indeed if this by-election does kick off in the coming weeks, indeed the coming months. We'll be following it here on GB News, so you know what to do. Remember to subscribe to follow all the twists and turns of this latest political drama.